Have you ever played a game so much that you end up trying stupid challenges to spice things up? Like, for example, what if I tried to play this game without using the most important button? Today, that's exactly what I'm gonna do with a game I played way too much myself, Rayman 3 Hoodlum Havoc. In this game, the most important will be the A button, which is used to jump and to hover while you are airborne. In a 3D platformer like Rayman 3, those are actions that you would think would be absolutely essential. But if you've ever seen a Rayman 3 speedrun, you may know it is a pretty broken game with a wide variety of tricks and glitches that we can use our advantage to move around. Especially the super jump glitch, which is when you go into first person mode as you're falling off an edge, propelling you upward. It only uses the Y button, and we can use this as a substitute to jumps to gain height, or even move horizontally given the right circumstances. And all this is exactly why I thought it would be a great candidate for such a challenge. Let's get into it. To begin, there is the menuing you have to do to get into the game. It is up to you if you think that should count or not, but either way, I thought it was worth mentioning. Here you will have to press A to select the game's language. You can then skip the intro cutscene and go through the title screen with start, but then you're forced to press A to create a new file, again to select a slot, then to name it with at least one character, confirm, and confirm again, and confirm the confirmation, which totals to 7 A presses just to get into the game. But what if I told you there's actually a clever way to reduce that number? Because what you can do is to remove your memory card before pressing new game, and when the game doesn't detect any memory card, it is gonna completely skip the file creation process, only asking you if you want to continue without saving, dialing down all this to only 3 A presses instead of 7. On to the first level. As you may know, Rayman 3 starts with an auto-scroller, and there is not much you have to do here except grabbing the first 6 red lamps. And pressing A here is not just very easy to avoid, it would be straight up useless. So we can just move on to the second level. After a quick cutscene, we are finally dropped into the game for real. So let's see how far we can progress without having to press A. We can make our way through the first room and into this big tree trunk. And there it is, our first roadblock. We are supposed to jump on these mushrooms to progress further into the tunnel, but obviously this would require pressing the A button, and that is what we're trying to avoid. So this is where the fun begins. Let's try to find a way around that. First of all, there is not much we can work with inside of this tunnel, so let's get out of here and see what we have available. And there are actually quite a lot of things we can try around here. My first idea was to use a trick I already knew of, which is a meter super jump, a variant of super jumps that you can do against the walls under certain conditions. And I was aware of one you can do in this room, on the wall right behind the flowers. And conveniently, you can use the caterpillar to get on top of them and drop against the wall, where we can do the meter super jump. And I thought that we could maybe use it to reach the next room a little further across the wall, but remember that we cannot hover. And the height from this super jump is not enough to give us a long enough drop to make it. So this just was not it. I then started to look around for other potential super jump spots, and even though it might look like it, you cannot just super jump from everywhere. So finding the right spot can take a lot of trial and error, assuming you even find something at all. The most promising spots are usually sharp looking edges, so I started searching for anything that could work, and I stumbled upon that spot at the entrance of the tree trunk. And after a bit of fiddling to find the sweet spot, it worked. It even worked pretty well and gave quite a lot of height, so I thought it might be enough to drop onto the upper part of the tunnel, just past the mushrooms. Unfortunately, it just did not make it. It was really close though. I just needed a little bit more distance, and we're in luck because I had an idea on how I could do just that. You see, while you are extending a super jump, you are usually not only going straight up, there is almost always some horizontal movement along with it. And it turns out this movement is not random, and there is even a handful of ways to manipulate it, one of them being pretty easy because you just need to land. What happens when you land from being airborne is that the game will remember in which direction and at what speed you were moving the moment you landed, and this will then be applied to your next extended super jump, the result being the aforementioned horizontal movement. So now, knowing this, I can just find a platform I can drop from, make sure I'm moving toward the desired direction the moment I land, storing that horizontal momentum, then I can go back to the super jump spot, making sure I do not overwrite the speed by falling and landing on the way, And if I do it again, this time I get moved exactly toward where I want to go while extending the super jump, giving me the extra distance I needed to barely make it to the upper part of the tunnel. And with that, we officially overcame our first roadblock and we can proceed to the next room. Here, we need to reach the top of this large room, which may look like quite a challenge without jumping or hovering, but I already know plenty of super jumps that are used here in Rayman 3 speedruns, and we can easily use one of them to make our way up there, like for example that meter super jump. From there, we can actually have a smooth progression for a while, so let's just follow the path until we get stuck, which is quickly gonna happen, right here. And even if we could reach up there, not any of the things I could think of trying could get us behind the door. And no, we're actually completely stuck down here with no way to even go back, so let's try to find another way. My next idea was to maybe just try to follow the normal progression of the level, but even that comes with its set of challenges. We are supposed to chase Glowbox by jumping from platform to platform, but obviously here we cannot just do that, so I searched around in the area to see if I could find anything, and I saw that nearby ledge that looked like it could perhaps give a super jump, and it turned out it worked. Similarly to the trick in the first room, you can use that height to fall onto the first platform with the switch. That is great. It is progress, but this only gets us so far, as there is more gaps that we need to clear to continue chasing Glowbox. And knowledge on this platform can give us a super jump. But I know of another little trick that could be the perfect fit to get us out of this situation. In Rayman 3, you have the ability to roll by pressing the L trigger while moving, and this comes in different variants. First, you have your standard roll, press L while running around and Rayman will roll forward. Then you also have the strafe rolls, which is when you roll while you are holding R, the strafe button, often to lock onto something. This lets you roll in any cardinal direction, so forward, backward, left, or right. It is meant to be more of a combat move, used to dodge enemies' attacks, while always keeping them targeted. But there is a little oddity with the forward strafe roll that is gonna make it very interesting for us. So, if you do a forward strafe roll off a ledge, you may notice something a little strange. It seems like Rayman continues to move forward during the roll, completely ignoring the lack of solid ground under him. It is like gravity just isn't applied to this specific move for some reason. And that is exactly what we're gonna be able to use to help us in our quest. Basically, this is gonna let us roll from one platform to another, under the conditions of both platforms being close enough, and the one we are rolling toward not being too high compared to the one we are coming from. And here, the conditions are perfectly met. The bridge is close enough and it is barely low enough to just let us roll onto it. With that, we've successfully made it to the next platform. We can then easily move to the next one with the exact same technique, finally letting us reach Glowbox and free him from the barrel. Now with our hands back, finishing up the level is certainly gonna be a walk in the park. We can easily just use standard rolls to clear the gaps between the remaining platforms, hit the switch, watch the cutscene, and we are free to walk through the open door? Oh, that is right. The door does not actually open. What does happen is that Glowbox goes through the door, leaving a hole that we are supposed to jump through. With that, it seemed like everything I had done to get to that point was useless. All of this just to end up in front of that impassable door. But I was not going to give up just yet. What if I told you that maybe it was not all useless after all? Because I indeed had one more trick up my sleeve. Remember, when freeing Glowbox from the barrel, there is something else we get back. Rayman's hands. Might not seem like much, but this let us do something very interesting. It lets us ledge grab. Okay, this may also not seem like much, just like that. But believe it or not, it could be the key to solve this level's ultimate roadblock. Let me explain. Remember the first room where we manipulated the direction and speed of our super jump by landing in a specific way? Well, this is not the only way we can manipulate that. In fact, there is a much more drastic way to do it, and that is where the ledge grab comes to play. So, as we saw before, when you land, your velocity the moment you land gets stored and is then applied to your next super jump. And what happens when you ledge grab is that some velocity also gets stored in a similar fashion. Let's take a look. Wow! Now that was a lot of speed! So how did that happen exactly? Where did all that stored velocity come from? Well, to answer that, we need to talk about parallel universes. I'm just kidding, I swear it's not gonna be that complicated. Right, when the ledge grab occurs, something strange happens, and the velocity that gets stored, it is actually tied to the ledge coordinates. Once you understand that, you can actually start to make sense of what is going on. And a good way to do that is to use the map's origin's coordinates as a reference point. Let's use this clearly forest strat we just saw as an example. So first, as I said, we have our ledge coordinates, and the map's origin point we want to use as a reference, which is right here in this level. Once we've got these, we pretty much have everything we need already. We just need to draw an arrow from the origin to the ledge, and from that we can deduce what the velocity of the super jump is gonna be. The direction of the launch is simply gonna be the same as the direction of the arrow is pointing toward. And as for the speed, it goes as follows. The bigger the ledge coordinates values are, the faster the launch will be. And the furthest away you go from the map's origin, the bigger those values get. Therefore, the longer the arrow is, the faster the launch will be. In summary, the direction of the arrow tells us the direction of the super jump, and its length tells us the speed. For the height, it's unrelated to the ledge grab. It is gonna be about if the ledge we then try to super jump from would give us any height to begin with, horizontal momentum aside. We then just have to transfer that arrow to the ledge we super jump from, and we can have a pretty good prediction of what a horizontal super jump is gonna look like. If we do that one again, with all the logic behind it in mind, now it all makes sense. We start with the ledge grab, its coordinates get stored as a velocity, which we can visualize by an arrow going from the map's origin to the ledge. We transfer the arrow to the ledge we super jump from, and we can see that the launch precisely follows the arrow. So let's now go back to the fairy console and see if we can apply what we have learned to overcome that last obstacle. The first thing we want to look at is where the map's origin point is in that level, and in that case it is right by the corridor that connects the first and the second room. Then we draw an arrow from there to where we want to go, so in that case that's right behind the door. And if there are any ledges we can grab in the general area the arrow goes through, that means one of them could set up the right velocity to send us in the desired direction. All that while keeping in mind that after the ledge grab, we still need to find a ledge that gives us height when super jumping off it. And we need to avoid falling and landing, as this will override the velocity. Right away we can see this looks promising. This is where we get our hands back, and there are many ledges we can grab around here, so really all we need is a ledge we can get good height from with a super jump. And I quickly found this ledge on the nearby bridge as a great candidate. This is it, we have all the pieces we need. Let's put them together. After getting the hands back, I drop from the platform and ledge grab the bridge, setting up the velocity. Then, I just have to do that super jump again, this time with the stored velocity, and it all goes according to plan. By the power of horizontal super jumps, I am able to land behind the door, and with that we have officially done it. We've beaten Rayman 3 first level without pressing the A button. That was very satisfying. This showed that I was right about the game's potential for such a challenge. And carried away by my success, all I wanted was to move to the next level. But maybe I should have stopped while I was winning, because the next level is gonna be where I will hit my biggest roadblock yet. Without jumping, the very first room of this level just gives you absolutely nothing to work with. No geometry to stand on, no ledge to interact with, nothing. It is just this plain flat floor. I did try to run and roll into basically everything in case there would be maybe some kind of flow in the collisions that would let me raise myself onto at least something, but I was not able to find any success. Unfortunately, I am afraid this will have to be the first place where I admit defeat, because with the lack of options, I am left with no choice but to press the A button. It is a bit bittersweet, but if I have to do it, I want to make sure that this A press is worth it, and boy would it be here, as it is gonna completely unblock the situation. I am using it to jump on top of this ledge by the door, and that is a ledge that I already know very well, as it is used in speedruns to reach the top floor by super jumping off it, and super jumping off that intermediate floor. So here we can do the exact same thing and reach the top floor like that. Sadly, once up there, we find ourselves in a similar situation than in the first room, with really nothing to stand on and not much to work with. Barely out of reach of this ledge that would solve all our problems. But do not worry, I am still far from being out of ideas, and I had one to reach that very ledge. if we rewind to the intermediate floors ledge, there is something we can do slightly differently here that can be just good enough to get us what we want. Initially, I kept extending the super jump from there until I hit the top floor, which instantly cuts Rayman's momentum the instant you go through the floor. But what you can do instead is to stop extending it before you hit it, which will then carry the momentum you got from the super jump when you go through the floor, in that case letting me use that extra height to land on the ledge we were aiming for. And now that we are here, we can continue to basically follow the route used in speedruns, with first a super jump off the ledge to get us up the bridge, and once up there, another one on the side like that, nicely sending us to the corridor leading to the end of the level. And with that, it is another level done. Unfortunately, our perfect road has been tarnished by an A press, but that did not stop me from wanting to continue and see what could be done in the following level. Now this level is gonna start very differently than the last one, as in complete contrast to the last first room, here we have quite a lot to work with, so let's start searching. Like often, when possible, my first instinct is to try the strats already used in speedruns, and here, the standard super jump used in the first room can be used to get us to the to the bouncing platforms room. But since we cannot hover, it is not gonna get us much further than that, and unfortunately there is not a lot we can do from here, so it is gonna have to be something else. I did have an idea in mind, but that would require me to get to that upper platform these vines lead to, and it was proving to be quite the challenge. I tried to super jump from many spots with different setups, but nothing could get me quite up there. All I could get to was the lower part below the vines, and even though you just have to walk into them to grab them and climb, you then cannot let go without jumping, and therefore pressing A. I was stuck literally at hand's reach of my goal. But that is when I thought, maybe I did not need to look for something that complicated, and that the solution was right in front of me from the start, because despite everything else I tried, the spot that gave the best super jump was still that first one at the start. The problem with it was the angle the usual setup gives. But remember, the angle of super jumps, that is something that we can manipulate. This one is a bit finicky though, because even if we can easily store the desired velocity by falling from this platform, the area around the spot of the super jump has super janky collision, and getting back there without stumbling on some invisible bump and therefore losing the stored velocity is quite the challenge. But with some very careful maneuvering, you can get there, and if your stored angle was perfect, barely make it to that elusive upper platform. And now that we are up here, I can finally try out that idea I had in the back of my mind. And to visualize it, we will need to go back to a top-down view of the map and to pinpoint the map's origin. You might see where this is going. We have everything we need up here to set up a horizontal super jump, ledges to grab to store their coordinates as the velocity, and a ledge we can get a super jump from. So let's look at where the map's origin is in the level and what we can do with it. It is actually very close. It is right outside this wall, behind our Matuvu friend. If we draw our trusty arrow, we can see that the proximity between the origin and the ledges at our disposal mean we are not gonna get a lot of speed. But the direction looks very promising to get us to the next room. Well, I think there is no better way to see if it works than to try it, shall we? I picked the ledge the furthest away from the origin to maximize the speed I will get, and went for it. Like always, this could not have been closer. The launch is just good enough to get us above the wall's collision and reach the next room's trampoline, which is perfect because if we only reached the room's floor, we would have been stuck again. But with the bounce, we can just grab this platform and go to that elevated area from where we can do the classic speedrun strat, which let us reach the last room's floor, that thankfully extends beyond the room's walls. Once in there though, we face another one of these situations where there is not really anything we can do, as all we can stand on is this completely flat floor. But at least here it is not the start of the level, so we can retrace our steps and try something different. And that is great, because I thought I remembered there was a way to super jump somewhere off the edge of the room's floor that extends beyond the walls. So I tried various positions and setups, with sadly no success at all. But just when I was starting to lose hope again, I accidentally fell off the edge, and right below was one of the previous room's platforms. And when I landed there, I immediately remembered a super jump we can do from exactly here. And this one could get us much higher. Not enough to reach the very end, but enough to reach this upper platform on the last room, which can lead to many new possibilities. And I already knew what I wanted to do. All I needed to finalize this level was a way to access this small platform, and can I do just that by rolling off this elevated position, and from that platform we can do an ultimate super jump to reach the end of the level. This level had its fair share of challenges, but what a satisfaction to overcome them all and get it done with 0 A press. For the next level, if you're familiar with Rayman 3, you may know that it is a very simple level. It is basically just a cutscene and you just have to walk forward. Anyone can do this level without pressing the A button. But that is the thing, it was almost too simple, and I wanted to see if I could make things a little more interesting. You see, in speedruns we can do a trick here to avoid having to watch that cutscene, so it got me wondering, can I find a way to do the trick within this challenge, so we can not only beat the level without pressing A, but also do it fast? I had high hopes because to do this, I just had to get on top of this ramp going around the room, and from there, no A press required to execute the trick. But to get up there, we usually super jump from that small platform we jump on top of, which I can't do right now. First, I thought of trying to super jump off this small elevation behind this pillar we can barely get to, as it is possible in a similar position further in the room, but here it simply did not work. But thankfully, that was not our only candidate for ledges we can potentially super jump from in this room. We have this whole lower central area, entirely circled by a ledge, and lo and behold, we can get a super jump from that. And with it, barely make it to the ramp. And once we are here, we can execute the trick known as Rayman 4 skip. If you want to know more about it, I have already made a tutorial covering it. With this, we have bypassed the cutscene and beat the level, all with no A press. And that only leaves the teensy highway, which is obviously no problem, as even if we needed to jump, we can also do it with the B button. So with that, we are officially done with the ferry console. Looking back, I think that did not go too bad. Frankly, I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I started this challenge. It could have been a complete failure, but the entire first world in a single A press, I think that's a result I can be pretty satisfied with. Yeah, at the same time, it's a little bittersweet to be so close to the perfect 0 A press run. But I can settle with that with the satisfaction of knowing I gave it my best shot. And I hope you enjoy watching it as well. This took way longer than I thought it would, so we're gonna keep it to only ferry console for today, because if I go over the entire game, we are going to be here for hours. And I have a feeling the following worlds will only get more complex. But let me know if you want to see more of that, it will be a pleasure to keep the challenge going. That about wraps things up for this video. Thanks a lot for watching. I worked hard at trying not to press the A button, so I would appreciate it a ton if you did the opposite with the like button on this video. That's it, see ya!